Hello, my name is Inge Patsch and welcome to the series Systemic Thinking. Today, on this video, I would like to talk with you about archetypes. Archetypes, and you can read more about it in this book of Peter Senge in the fifth discipline, are like common stories in systemic loops, common stories in the causal loop diagrams. So there are like repeating patterns which we can observe in the social as well as ecological field time and again. And hence, because there is a certain common ground to the problem, there could also be a certain common approach to solutions, which I also want to introduce to you. So archetypes are another piece of the puzzle which can help you to really put causal loop diagrams and systemic thinking to real good use when you want to make a solution to a problem or find a solution to a problem. So I'm only listing a few here. If you want to know more about it, again, I can recommend you this book, this really nice book of Peter Senge. So the first archetype I want to present to you is called shifting the burden, or some also call it the archetype of addiction. And it goes as follows. So very central to this archetype is that you have a problem. And there are like two solutions to the problem. There is a fundamental solution and there is a symptomatic solution. The fundamental solution or the symptomatic solution, when applied, it works very fast and it balances the problem. In the same time, the symptomatic solution would also balance the problem, but there is a delay in how fast would it work. So while the symptomatic solution is applied, normally there are some kind of side effects, and they are like increasing or making the likeliness of the fundamental solution less likely to happen, or they undermine even the possibility of the fundamental solution to happen. Let's have a look at a few examples. So a very simple basic example to start off is, let's say you have back pain. So the symptomatic solution would be to take a painkiller and the pain would be gone. The fundamental solution might be that you change your habits. You sit less in front of the computer, or you drive less with the car, you have more sports, you do exercises, you strengthen your muscles there, you change your nutrition, whatsoever. So whatever is the habit which is causing the back pain, you should change this habit. But while you take painkiller, there is the side effect that this physical feedback that your body is telling you, guys, something is wrong, is disturbed. So hence, it undermines the likeliness that you would change the habit, because once you don't feel the back pain anymore, you might not change the habit, which is causing it in the first hand. And therefore, basically back pain will come back even worse once the painkiller is gone and you are in this downward spiral of addiction. Another example from economics I would like to give you is, for example, this problem which we all see is the gap between rich and poor, which is increasing more and more. And one of the type, there are hundreds of symptomatic approaches out there. So one, in my opinion, and I can argue with you, you can comment on this video, but from my opinion, one symptomatic solution, therefore, is to run employment programs, which are also systemically not stable. And when people are working more and more, like the actual fundamental solution, I would say, is, for example, that there is maybe a wealth tax, and which I find the most best approach I have ever seen to this, is interest-free money. But I'll explain about this in a different video, why interest is actually a redistribution from the poor to the rich. Anyway, this would be the fundamental solution, but it would take a bit time and it would need to be politically convincing implemented. But the more people are focusing on employment program, and I could have chosen any side effect, you can talk about the side effect that this is distracting from the real problem. I use the side effect saying, when people are like in this rat race of working 50, 60 hours in a week just in order to come by with what they have, they would not have the time to really think about our system, to really engage themselves in a basic democratic process, participatory, and hence no one would really lobby for any kind of financial system which is more just and fair in the distribution of wealth. Another example, maybe a bit also from economics, from a different perspective, would be environmental destruction. And I would argue here that like green technology can Doesn't have to necessarily be, it depends of course what type of technology, but green technology can be a symptomatic solution, especially if a lot of investment is needed into it. And if it's not circular economy friendly. So if I have the same patterns of economy, the take, make, dispose economy, just with a bit greener technologies rather than normal lights, I lose LED lights, and rather than the normal insulation I had, I use a bit better insulation. So I just lower my footprint. I basically lock in myself technologically, especially when, for example, in construction, you would build a construction or investing into machines. This is a long time investment. So a company invests for the next 20, 30 years very often. So hence they're like in a technological lock-in. If I, in the year 2020, invest in a new machine, which uses less CO2 than maybe the one before, I might not in 5 years switch to a circular economy bridge. So the fundamental solution might be to say, let's go into circular economy. Let's really make an approach which looks into the flow of materials 100%. But of course, this will take a bit longer time to implement. And not all, like technology can of course also contribute to the circular economy. Then of course it's not meant by this example. As a small exercise, I would love you to just pause the video here and think about like what is all bothering us at the moment. This is COVID-19, this situation. So I want you to think for yourself about what would be a symptomatic and a fundamental solution in the context of the situation which we are in today, and maybe draw this on a piece of paper. I would be happy to read your comments below the video to see what you came up with, which fundamental and symptomatic solutions you feel that there are for COVID-19. Meanwhile, I want to tell you what is basically how do you handle a situation like this. So the idea in a situation where you are in shifting the burden is that you apply both the symptomatic and the fundamental solution at the same time in order to come out of this situation in the long run. We already heard what happens if you only apply the symptomatic solution. Only applying the fundamental solution might often not work because, let's say, you have back pain. Maybe you need first to recover to be able to do some exercises again. So also, again, we saw the technology which was there. It doesn't mean to not invest in greener technology, but then see it, okay, saying that's maybe just the symptomatic solution. The fundamental solution will need to be change our supply chains, let's say. Yeah, that much for shifting the burden. Let's come to another archetype now. The next archetype is called eroding goals. So eroding goals has to do with when you have a certain goal, something you want to reach, be it your skill in singing or playing guitar, or be it any kind of achievement you want to have professionally, a target you have in your life, you want to become astronaut, or it can be a goal which like countries would set to eradicate poverty, the sustainable development goals, and then there is a gap, like apparently you have still not reached it. And like there are two ways to basically deal with this. So one would be to say you can take actions to improve the conditions, which would change the conditions, and then therefore the gap would be lower. Or the other one is, of course, if this takes time, so especially if it's politically not wanted, there would be also probably the pressure to adjust the goals. So if we say, I don't know, climate change, for example, would be saying, okay, we want to reduce the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but because it's very hard to actually make all these actions which will change it, maybe we say, okay, 2 degrees Celsius is also fine. Or you have the target that you want to be able to play Beethoven's symphony on the piano, but you don't find enough time to practice and you're stuck. And so you say, okay, it's nice for me if I can just play up and down some small pieces which are much simpler. So this is called the eroding goals. And the solution for it is rather obvious, but still it can be helpful to keep this in mind. Sometimes it's saying stick to your vision. So just be aware about this pattern to happen and make sure that you don't start to erode the goals. Another symptom which we find often is success to successful. Also here we have two loops which go together. In this case, these are two reinforcing loops. So the first loop is like there is the decision that you give resources. This can be money, this can be time, this can be attention to a child, this can be material, this can be working space, this can be crops, whatsoever. So you give any kind of resources which is required to do a certain process, you give them to A rather than to B. And therefore, A will have more resources, hence A will be more successful. And because of this success, you will be more likely to give, again, resources to A. While when A receives the resources, this means that there are less resources for B, which means that if there are less resources, probably B will be less successful. And because B will be less successful, most likely you will the next time also not give resources to B. So this will make it more likely that the resources are going to A rather than to B. So once you're like in this locked-in situation, this can become rather dangerous. This, especially when there is like an unhealthy competition. Let's say if A and B have a different starting point, such as, for example, two economies would have. If you say the economy of Austria is all of a sudden to compete with the economy of Nepal, which might be an unhealthy competition because they're simply in a very different starting point. Or you say, I don't know, a 16-year-old student has to compete with a mathematics professor in solving a mathematical problem. So that's what I mean with, that's what is meant with unhealthy competition. If both partners are same, that might be a fair process, but if the both partners start off from a different starting point, it would not be good because it might threat the whole system. So you might start to probably lose options. Maybe B would come up with a different solution. So you tend towards a monoculture sometimes when you do this, and therefore the solution would be to probably decouple the support of A and B, or to figure out some kind of balancing distribution, that maybe 50% is going fixed to someone, or that you, this could also be, for example, the competition between work and private life, that you say, okay, I dedicatedly give some time to the family as well as to work. So you decouple the two, and you are not giving more time to work just because you were so successful and you want to work more and more and totally lose track, for example, of your family. And yes, this is another one which is very close to my heart, same like shifting the burden, because I feel that especially in the environmental discussion that is happening a lot. And if you happen to be one of my students in one of my classes, I'm sure we have played the fish game. So the tragedy of the common goes as follows. There is a certain resource. This can be fish, or this could be air. This could be the capacity of a road to take cars, etc., etc. And then there are the activities like in this model, like there are two actors are listed, but of course there could be many actors. So this could be there could be 100 or 200 or 500 actors which all contribute to this. So let's start here from the bottom. There is A's activity. Let's use the example of fishing. So A is going fishing. The more A fishes, the more he will get fish, and the more he will have fish, he will have more profit, and the more he can go fishing. So this can be a reinforcing loop. Like a typical story of an entrepreneur, he started off with one small boat and one net, and then he fished a lot of fish, and he could sell more fish, and he got the second boat, and so on. So this would be the typical story of the entrepreneur. And meanwhile, B is doing the same. And then both of them together, there is the total activity. In that case, there is the total removal of fish from the ocean or a certain pond. And then with a certain delay, because the total limit, there is a resource limit, there is a total number of fish, and then the actions of both partners would gain up, and therefore slowly there would be less and less fish available, or they would be further out in the ocean or deeper down in the lake, so that per number of going out for fishing, they would gain less, which has this, and because it would be less, also the net gain of A and the net gain of B would be less. So probably they have to fish more in order to, they have to invest more and so on. And you see there is like a kind of negative loop going on. So this phenomenon has been researched a lot by Elinor Ostrom, who has even received the Nobel Prize for her work. on the commons. And she figured out that actually the best way, like if you go out in the videos and you Google about the commons and the tragedy of the commons, you will find a lot of videos which tell you about that, well, all you have to do is you just have to commodify things. So if you just put the price tag on nature and say, if you pay for fishing, then this will help most. Or if you say privatizing, like all the forests and this pond is getting privatized, you will remove this. Eleanor Ostrom has figured out that neither privatizing it, so giving it to the market, nor giving it to the states, or nor saying, okay, the pond is now the state's ones and you have to get the permission to fish there, neither of these two was efficient. She has been researching commons all over the world, which were having a resource limit, same as we had before, and she figured out that the best thing you can do is that you can give it to the user community to come up with their own rules on how to handle it. So like this would be another video to talk about Eleanor Ostrom's approaches. Long story short, what you can keep in mind is that the tragedy of the commons can be solved by putting it into the hands of the community to handle it, and economizing does normally not work. So you need to have these rules and regulation, and it need to be the users, like in this loop, actually. Here there needs to be some kind of commons understanding that simply A doesn't increase his activity, and he can trust on that B is also not increasing it. So this is the key to actually solving this, that there is a voluntarily or community self-made limitation of saying how high can we or will we voluntarily increase the activity, because everyone understands that if we overdo this, that the resources will be gone. Well, that much was just for a handful of archetypes introduced. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on archetypes and systemic thinking. If you liked my video, please subscribe my channel. And meanwhile, I wish you a nice day.